Of the hallowed valley of Mournholt, men speak no more, neither in song nor in curse, for to speak its name is to invite the pall of its doom. It is said that beyond the shrouded moors of Galdric's March, where the earth swallows light and the wind carries the scent of grave rot, there once lay a valley untouched by the sun. A place where even the crows dared not tarry, nor the wolves give voice. There, beneath the ancient hills, something was unearthed, and men, in their hunger, dared to call it their own. But what they uncovered was not meant for hands of flesh. The year of our Lord 1274 fell colder upon the northern marches of the Holy Empire. By the hand of stone and toil of peasant back, the stronghold of Varnberg stood, clasped to the cliffs like a barnacle to rotted bone. The fortress walls, blackened by years of soot and storm, rose jagged against a sky ever grey, its towers crowned with the standards of House Dravemont, a sigil of a blind crow clutching a severed tongue. Below the walls stretched the serfdom, a knot of timber hovels pressed against the sodden earth. Mud-washed streets slithered between them, lined with refuse and black pools of stagnant water. The peasants moved in silence, their eyes hollow, their faces turned always downward. They did not speak freely in Varnberg, not since the whispers began. At the heart of the keep, beyond the iron portcullis and the frost-bitten courtyard, lived Lord Theobald Dravemont, last of his line, a man whose shadow fell long upon the land. His hair, once sable, now hung in threads of ashen grey, framing a face scored deep with furrows that spoke of sleepless nights and silent terrors. His retainers said he spoke often to the walls of his solar, and at times, to things beyond them. On the eve of Candlemas, as the snows began to melt into black slush, a strange sound was heard beneath the stone chapel of St. Lugaire, a low moaning, like a wind clawing at the throat of the earth. The sexton, an old bent man named Brother Jorund, swore by the bones of saints that the crucifix above the altar wept dark ichor. The peasants dared not speak of it, yet they averted their eyes when passing the chapel's door, now chained shut with iron links pitted by rust. Lord Theobald gave no heed, or so it seemed. But on that same night, his steward found upon the Lord's study desk a single sheet of vellum, scrawled not in ink, but in what appeared to be a dark, congealed substance. Upon it, a single word repeated over and over, Valak. None knew the tongue. None dared inquire. The next morning, a child was found at the gates of the village, her eyes stitched shut with coarse thread, her mouth sewn into a silent grimace. The child had no tongue. The villagers claimed no knowledge. The monks said it was a warning. The soldiers murmured it was witchery. But in the marrow of their bones, all knew. Mournholt had begun to stir. It was upon the third night after Candlemas that Lord Theobald summoned to his chamber the learned friar, Father Anspert, a man of letters and ink-stained hands, known for his study of forbidden scriptures salvaged from the burned libraries of Occitania. Father Anspert, gaunt and sharp as a raven's beak, came at the bell's toll, clutching beneath his robe a satchel bound with iron clasps. The chamber of Lord Theobald was a vault of shadow. The hearth lay cold. Only a single beeswax candle guttered on the oaken desk, its flame quivering though the air was still. The stone walls, scoured by age, bore strange marks, spirals, barbed crosses, and symbols twisted like roots strangling a heart. They had not been there a fortnight past. Lord Theobald stood before the hearth, his hands clasped tight behind his back. When he spoke, his voice was but a whisper hoarsened by sleeplessness. "Father, in your studies, have you known the tongue of Valak?" Father Anspert did not answer at once. His eyes lingered on the walls, on the flickering marks that seemed, in that faint light, to shudder as if alive. "That word is not of men," he said at length, his voice dry as a sermon whispered over an open grave. "It belongs to the hollow tribes, those who walked before Babel fell. Their tongue was silence." At this, Theobald turned. His eyes, once of piercing ice, now sunken and rimmed with shadow, held no reflection of the candle's light. "They speak," he said softly, "in dreams, in stones, in the marrow of this keep." Father Anspert's gaze fell to the Lord's hands, the nails blackened, the fingers trembling ever so slightly. He made to speak, but Theobald raised one hand, and placed upon the desk a single object wrapped in a cloth dark with old blood. The friar felt the weight of unseen eyes upon his neck as he reached out and unfolded the cloth. Within lay a shard of bone, yellowed, hairline cracked, carved with symbols so fine they seemed woven of spider's silk. symbols that shifted subtly under his gaze, curling inward like a withering leaf. A sudden taste of iron filled his mouth. "Where?" he managed. Theobald's lips parted in something that might have been a smile, or the rictus of a man drowning. "Beneath the chapel, in the hollow earth." At that, a noise stirred from beyond the chamber's door. A soft, rhythmic sound, like the shuffling of bare feet across wet stone, slow, deliberate. Neither man moved. The candle guttered once more, and died. In the suffocating dark, there was no sound save the soft hiss of wax cooling on the desk, and the shuffling at the door. Father Ansbert dared not speak. His hand hovered above the bone shard, though every instinct within him shrieked to recoil. The darkness pressed upon his lungs like a stone slab. And a faint tapping, 3 deliberate knocks upon the door. Soft, yet unmistakable, as if a hand of skinless bone sought entry with a patience beyond mortal reckoning. Lord Theobald stood unmoving, his face a pale outline against the void. When at last he spoke, his voice was thin as a thread drawn taut over an abyss. "They do not knock for me." Ansbert's heart hammered. He forced his lips to shape a prayer, but no sound came. His throat clenched as though bound by invisible cords. Theobald moved, slowly, as a man descending into his own grave, and lifted the shard of bone from the cloth. He held it between thumb and forefinger, lifting it to the silent friar. "Take it." Ansbert shook his head. His limbs refused him, his very marrow recoiled. Theobald's hand did not lower. His eyes, empty, rimmed with black veins spidering toward the temples, bore into Ansbert's with a hollow patience. "Take it, for they have marked you now." The tapping ceased, and in its place a sound came, low, wet, guttural, as if something vast and hollowed of flesh was drawing breath beyond the door. A sigh born not of lungs, but of earth and stone and the endless dark between stars. Father Ansbert felt his knees give way. He clutched at the desk, but his hand fell upon the shard. The bone was warm, pulsing faintly, and in that touch he heard them. Whispers. A choir of 1,000 murmurs, each word layered upon the other, a language without tongue, without breath, crawling across his mind like roots burrowing into damp soil. Valak, 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 a foreign word. And yet he understood. It was not a name. It was an invitation. The door creaked, just a hair's breadth, and a sliver of darkness, deeper than night, colder than the grave, bled into the chamber's air. The chamber, though sealed by stout oak and iron bands, seemed now no more barrier than a thin skin stretched across a festering wound. The sliver of darkness pressed inward, a creeping shadow that did not obey the laws of flame or stone. It pooled upon the flagstones, bleeding like ink spilled upon parchment, and as it touched the hem of Father Ansbert's robe, he felt his flesh crawl. Not with cold, but with recognition. His mind reeled. Images not his own flooded his thoughts. A city of pillars built from the bones of giants. A sky that wept black rain upon a congregation of faceless things kneeling before a throne of roots. A vast mouth yawning beneath the earth, rimmed with teeth like broken gravestones, whispering prayers in a language that devoured memory itself. He gasped, a sharp, ragged sound in the silent chamber, and dropped the shard. It struck the stone with a sound not of bone, but of a bell tolling in some fathomless deep. Theobald turned his gaze toward the door, and spoke a single word. "Enter." The door did not swing wide, nor shatter, nor fall. It withered. Before their eyes, the oak darkened, cracked, and shriveled like a leaf caught in flame, its iron bindings corroding into black dust. Within heartbeats, nothing remained but a yawning threshold beyond which lay a corridor drenched in a twilight that no sun had ever touched. And standing within it, a figure, or the outline of one, tall beyond reckoning, its form shrouded in folds of darkness that rippled like a sea of ink. No face marked its hooded visage, no hand emerged from its sleeves. Only a presence, vast, crushing, eternal. It bowed its head once, slow as the fall of a guillotine. Father Ansbert felt his bladder release. The stench of ammonia mingled with the cold musk of the thing that entered. And then the whispers rose. Louder now. a tide pressing against the walls of his skull. The voices wove around a single phrase, a benediction from beyond the grave of the world. "Come to the hollow." Theobald smiled. A thin, brittle crack of a man unmade. He stepped forward and knelt before the figure. Lord Theobald knelt as a penitent before the figure, head bowed, hands unclasped in solemn offering. The chamber around them quivered, as though the stones themselves held breath. Father Ansbert remained frozen, his heart a drumbeat against his ribs. His eyes, wide with terror, beheld a scene no scripture dared envision. The figure extended an arm, a slow, gliding motion, though no flesh moved beneath the shadowed folds. And from within its sleeve fell a single length of thread, thin as a spider's web, black as the void beyond creation. It drifted soundlessly, coiling through the air, until it touched Theobald's throat. The Lord of Varnberg did not resist. The thread wound once, twice, thrice, and tightened. Ansbert opened his mouth. Whether to cry, to pray, or to beg, he would never know. For as the thread drew taut, Theobald's head lifted with it, slowly, with a grace unnatural, until it swayed above his shoulders, neck drawn like a marionette. His eyes, glazed and vacant, stared directly into Ansbert's own. And then the head smiled. Not Theobald's smile, but another's. A soft, wet snapping of sinew echoed in the chamber as the skin upon his face split in fine, weeping lines, symbols etched not by blade, but by the will of the hollow itself. The figure leaned closer. No voice stirred the air, yet the words settled into Ansbert's mind like nails driven into wood. "The tongue of Valak speaks through silence." The friar screamed then, a sound that felt distant, belonging to some other man in some other life. The walls of the chamber rippled, the marks upon them writhing like worms in loam, bleeding dark ichor. The air grew heavy with the scent of wet earth and ancient blood. One by one, the stones of Varnberg began to hum, a low, mournful note, as if the fortress itself mourned its soul. Ansbert stumbled back, clutching his temples, the whispers clawing into his thoughts, hollowing them. And as he fell to his knees, the last thing he beheld before the darkness swallowed him was the figure folding its arms across its breast, and Lord Theobald rising, no longer a man, but a vessel, eyes black, lips sewn with the same thread now tightening about the friar's heart. A new voice, his voice, whispering, "The hollow has room for one more." When dawn broke over the cliffs of Varnberg, the keep stood silent. The chapel's bell tolled once, though no hand touched the rope, and the valley of Mournholt was never spoken of again.